Hey there, Overpower people. Welcome back to a new Traveling Goof video. Today we're going to be starting a brand new series. It's going to be focused on getting some new players ready to play this resurrected Overpower trading card game. Today we're going to be talking about the 4 starter decks. And we're going to be talking about how to fix these player decks into something that a new player would be able to play well with. LRG has done so many amazing things with the ERB set. I can't be too mad that these starter decks are a miss. As it is, these decks are not starter friendly. Let's take a look. So a tournament legal deck is going to be 51 cards if there are no events, and then 56 cards if there are. These decks, once you take out the mission set and the characters, they run at 47. That's 9 cards below what's even legal. I don't know why LRG decided to give new players an illegal deck. It just does not make sense. So let's take a look at these 47 cards. You've got 24 power cards, which is a little bit heavier than I would run, but that's not a problem. It's good to give people some variety. Then, in terms of specials, take a look at this. 13 special cards. What deck runs this few special cards? Now, I get that they are a little bit more complicated than the rest of the game, but this is where a lot of the flavor comes in. And you wouldn't want to give maybe the most difficult specials, but 13 is just not enough. Then you have universe cards, which part of the base game, and I love them, but these are not easy to explain to a new player because you have so many different types. You know, this one's an ally. This one doesn't even say basic except in the small text. It just says longbow. So a new player is wondering if these are different types of cards altogether. These are going to be very confusing to people, even though they are cool. And then, oh my gosh, 3 events? Really? I get that events are important, but they break the rules. And having 3 of these rule-breaking cards for a new player is going to make it very hard for them to learn the game. So there are 3 things that make Overpower unique as a card game. That is duplication, battling, and venture. These are huge mechanics that's very important to teach and get right as a foundation. Now, the rest of this stuff is a little bit less important, and I've found has really confused a lot of new players. So all the more complicated cards, for example, your events, all the different types of universes, a whole bunch of cards that crazily modify some of the rules, should all be saved for a second playthrough. Instead, we want to try and simplify the game as much as possible so that a new player will be able to understand these basic mechanics of duplication, battling, and venture, and then come back excited to learn more. So I think I'm going to try and modify some of these decks in order to better achieve those goals. And then I'm going to create what I call a Game 2 pack that would be included in here, where you'd have a base 51 card set in the box, and then all the cards pretty much that I'm taking out would be put in a second sleeve that would be in here with kind of the annotation that, hey, put these in once you've played your first game. I think that way you can introduce those complicated universe interactions, those events, some of those other type of cards that a new player does not want to get bogged down on in their first playthrough. So each one of these decks is 47 cards. I'm going to be removing the 3 missions as well as most of the universes, the trainings, and the allies, so that we have only 40 cards left. Now, we're going to have to add 11 more cards in order to make it tournament legal at this point. So I'm going to start off by doing this with the Resistance, and then I'll do it with Horror Menagerie, because I think these 2 decks are closer to being ready to play than Ungodly Powers and Time Detectives are. Alright, so here is the Resistance starter deck. We have the 47 cards played out. We're going to be removing the 3 events, the 2 allies, and 2 training cards. Now, I know that allies are going to be the most useful of all the different universe cards, and we'll add them back in for a deck 2 modification, but I think that it is just a little bit more straightforward to have these modification attacks when you have so many power cards down here. They do a good job at showing how a universe attack is done, which is going to be really important for teamwork cards down the way. So I think that it's beneficial to at least go over that mechanic and show how a universe card itself is applied. So we're going to keep these in. We've also got the 24 power cards. I'm not going to touch those whatsoever, but I will clean these up. So the big thing that you notice, first of all, is that there's not a lot of specials here. You have Zorro, who's got 4, Three Musketeers have 3, John Carter 4, and Billy the Kid 2. So one of the things that I want to do with each one of these decks is going to be adding in a few any characters, because these are also incredibly important card types, and we want to make sure we know how they can get played. So first of all, every deck needs a Merlin's Magic to negate. You also have your Avoid with Freya, which is going to be extremely important. And then I wanted to include a Cataclysm as well. I looked at them. I mean, obviously you have, Fairy Protection or Rainbow Bridge, which are going to be really good. But I think a new player is going to really love having a big, beefy Tanupa 10 multi-attack. So we're going to include that. And then I'm also going to include a Lilith Swarm for a nice 5 any power assist. In this case, we have a few different any powers in this deck, but some of the other ones don't have any. So this at least shows that there is a 5th icon and explains how to use that along with the multi-power. And then finally, I've got an offsuit Ambush. So I think these 5 any characters are extremely important to include in. They're going to give you a good idea of what any characters are. So this brings us up to 45 cards, so we need to add 6 more into the deck. So I think Zorro's a good candidate, first of all. So let's throw in his Ancestral Rapier. Another good combat attack to potentially go with his 3 quick strokes. And then for the 3 Musketeers, you've got Aramis, you've got Athos, and you've got Valiant Charge. Anyone who's going to be playing the 3 Musketeers wants to at least see all 3 of the originals. So here's Porthos, and then we'll keep D'Artagnan a mystery so that they can get him in a pack, but I'll add in another Valiant Charge to bring 3 Musketeers up to 5 specials. And then we're going to be looking at Billy the Kid. He's going to be in reserve for most of the game, so let's take out Regulators. It's a very cool card. I love having Billy up front, but that's just going to be frustrating to have a wall of text like this that probably won't be able to be played for a while. And instead, we're going to give another copy of I'll Make You Famous, and then Quick Draw, which, if it gets down to it, he's one of the sole characters standing. You want to have a nice gunslinger duel. Finally, let's get these last 2 cards in, throw in another Virginia Fighting Man, and a second Dotar Sojab. So this should bring us up to 51 cards with combat. It's going to keep things pretty straightforward. Actually, in this case, you have a ton of just special cards that do attacks, which that's going to be really nice for a new player, a little bit less. So I think this deck is in pretty good shape. And then we're going to have what I want to call a Game 2 packet. And that's going to bring back in all these cards that we were taking out. So remember, we were at 51 cards. So adding in these 7 is going to bring us up to 58. Still a decent deck number. That will introduce a 2nd type and a 3rd type of universe cards. I'll be adding in the event cards, so they'll be able to flesh out the normal 8-step overpowered turn. And I want to put in a home base as well. Now, Baker Street is not a great one here. It doesn't really synergize with anything aside from Ancestral Rapier. But honestly, I would want to put Round Table with this deck. I just don't have any. So we're going to go with Baker Street for now. So what I would want to do is put this in with an insert in its own sleeve. So they'd be packaged up, 2 separate packages. You'd have your main deck with all these cards, all your characters, in a single packet. It says open this first. You'd have the layout of, put these characters in front, put this character in reserve. Cool, I know how to play this base packet. And then when you're ready, once you've played your first game, let's throw these more complicated cards in, because that's 4 fewer things to have to explain on the first game. Alright. That is our first deck modified. Let's take a look at the Horror Menagerie next. Alright, so same thing. We're going to be taking out the 4 trainings and the 3 events, keeping the power pack, keeping everything else. But in order to get back those 11 cards, we're going to be adding 5 any characters: Freya, Merlin, Tanupa, Lilith Swarm, and in this case our Combat 7 Ambush. I like playing Cthulhu from Reserve. We're going to keep Mina on the front line. So first thing I want to do is take out her Dracula's Telepathic Connection. This is a great card, but you're going to be revealing a number of cards in their hands, and then you're going to probably have to read every single one of them because you're never going to have seen them before. And that's going to slow everything down, and that's not what we want. So instead, let's put out 2 of her Jonathan Harkers. It's a good 5 power card, used for attack or defense. That's great. Also introduces the concept of duplication and specials. You can also add in her Nocturnal Hunter and then her Vampiric Celerity to discard a place card. Alright, for Headless Horseman, let's add in another one of these awesome pumpkin heads. Love that card. That is something that I just want to play a ton of. And then normally I would say Relentless Hessian can be added in there as well. I don't have any others to add since all 3 of them are in my Headless Horseman deck. So instead, let's throw another Human Spine Whip, crank up that gore and horror feel of the deck. For the Mummy, let's add one of his Relentless Pursuits. I was thinking about adding his 5 instead, but let's not show his hand too much. And for Cthulhu, I'm going to add in his Distracting Intervention. A little bit more of a complicated card, but it can be played from reserve. And I'll take out his Avoid. 7 cards we took out to add back in, and in this case, Asclepion is a great home base. That's going to help out Mina Harker quite a bit in his game 2. Alright, so those are my thoughts for changing these starter decks up so that they're a little bit more new player friendly, including 51 cards in a playable deck, making these things actually legal, and introducing that second game separate packet to reduce the number of rules that you have to front load to a new player. So stay tuned. We're going to be putting out another video for actually how to play with these 2 starter decks that we've manipulated, focusing on the duplication, battling, and invention mechanics. Hopefully I can make it a pretty quick video so that people will be able to stream in a quick how-to on their decks. So keep an eye out for that. Thanks for watching as always, and happy venturing. Bye.